The story for today comes from the Reddit user BooBoo87XX. Every Halloween, my mom dresses up as Tinky-Winky from the Teletubbies, and never once broke character until last year. Now she's gone. I don't know how my mom loved that costume so much. I hated it. Imagine waking up every Halloween morning seeing Tinky-Winky standing over you. And not the Tinky-Winky you see on TV. Oh no, my mom's costume was more sort of a cheap knockoff version from hell. The eyes were sunk in and way too big for its face. The skin seemed moist, almost jelly-like to the touch. And that creepy grin. I will never forget that grin. It used to give me nightmares. I couldn't tell my mom how much it scared me, because that would only make things worse. She loved torturing me like that. My mom really loved Halloween, and all things horror. Well, loved might be an understatement. It was more like an obsession. It was all she could talk about for most of the year. As soon as it was over, she would start planning for the following year. And it cost her and my dad a fortune because she refused to do the same theme twice. So almost everything she had bought was new, and as you can imagine, that didn't go down well with my dad. When my brother Luke and I were young, my parents used to fight a lot over mom's obsession. But after a while, my dad came to the realization that he was fighting a losing battle and gave up. I suppose he didn't have too much of a choice, or she would have made his life a living hell. One time, he wouldn't let her buy an animatronic zombie that could jump out of its seat because he said it cost too much. She gave him tuna for lunch and dinner every day for the next 6 weeks because she said it was her favorite, which it was. Now he can't stand the smell of that stuff anymore without gawking. Come to think of it, there is a long list of foods my dad cannot stand. I wonder why. But to be fair, my mom, she was easygoing and never complained. Even when he forgot her birthday, which happened way too often, so I guess it was hard to argue with her over a few decorations. My mom never cared for any other holidays, so for Christmas and birthdays, me and Luke used to buy Halloween stuff, decorations, ornaments, even movie props. She loved things like that. Once, I bought her a pinhead costume because I knew how much she loved the movie and thought it might encourage her to wear it, and it did, but unfortunately, not on Halloween. I was the only one who was terrified of that disturbing Tinky-Winky suit. My brother hated it too. We were always trying to find ways to get rid of it, but the only time we ever saw it was on Halloween. We searched every inch of that house 100 times over, but we could never find it. So we tried to find ways to get her to take it off, but it wasn't easy. Like I said, I never saw her break character, even once. Never mind taking off the suit. Even the time Luke fell off the oak tree in the backyard and broke his wrist, she kept it on the whole time at the hospital. It was fucked up she wouldn't break character to tell the doctor what happened. Luckily, I jumped in and explained to the doctor that staying in character was a family tradition. I think if he had to listen to one more, he would have never signed her into the institution, and rightly so. Surprisingly, he took it well, and he didn't ring child services on her, even though he must have thought she was on drugs. For the last few years, Luke and I have been betting on who can get the hold of that suit first. We tried everything, from throwing buckets of water onto her, to giving her laxatives in her food, which I had nothing to do with, I might add. But I did accidentally set fire to her once. I was trying to smoke her out of there with some sage that she kept to ward off spirits, but it didn't go as planned. Needless to say, that's how she got the bucket of water thrown over her. I felt awful over it. She ended up staying in bed for the rest of the day soaking wet, and it ruined her Halloween. After that, we agreed to wait until she took off the suit before we tried destroying it. Since then, we tried to catch her by surprise and started spying on her. We were sure she had to take it off at some point to eat or go to the toilet. Turns out she never broke character once, all that time she was alone. It was madness watching her singing and dancing like that the whole time. One year, we got up really early to catch her before she put on the suit, but I swear she must have gone to bed like that because when we went into her room, she was in full costume. I had often asked my mom what's the deal with that suit, but she always said the same thing. It's a family tradition, which never made sense to me since she was the only one that seemed to take part of it. Even my dad avoided talking about it. All I got out of him was, talk to your mother about it. It's not my department, before walking away every time I mentioned it. Last year I made a decision to get rid of that thing one way or another. I couldn't face waking up one more morning with that thing lying beside me. It still gives me shivers thinking about its slimy arms wrapped around me. My dad and Luke used to think it was hilarious when I woke up screaming every Halloween. They couldn't even eat their breakfast, they used to laugh so much. I bet if it happened to them, they wouldn't find it so funny. I told them multiple times that morning that I couldn't take it anymore and promised my mom if she doesn't leave me alone, she would never wear that disgusting suit again. Which in hindsight was not the best way of wording it, considering what happened to her. I didn't plan on hurting her. I thought if I threatened her she might leave me alone, but she didn't. In fact, it only made things worse. All that day she kept jumping out from random places and scaring the shit out of me. Until I finally snapped. It was about 8 o'clock. I had just finished getting ready to go out and was heading downstairs, when suddenly she jumped out at me when I turned the corner at the top of the stairs. I didn't think, I just reacted and pushed her. Not hard, just gave her a little nudge and she fell, head over heels all the way down to the bottom. That was the first time I heard her voice on Halloween. "Thanks," was all she said before going silent. I ran down and tried to help her, but I couldn't figure out how to take off the suit. There was no zipper or anything like that, so I tried ripping the head off. But when I did, she started moaning, which was a relief to hear. I thought she was dead. I was just about to ring an ambulance when I heard tires screeching outside our house. I ran to the door hoping to see my dad's car in the driveway, but instead it was a white van. Seconds later, the back door opens and two guys dressed in hazard suits jump out, pushing a stretcher. They almost knocked me over as they pushed past me on the way to my mother. I didn't know who they were and how they knew my mom was hurt, but I was just happy someone was here to help. For all they know, she could have had a spinal cord injury, but they just picked her up and flung her on the trolley like if she was a piece of furniture without checking her out. Before I got a chance to process what was happening, they were gone out the door. I tried to follow them, but was stopped by a short guy with a clipboard. "Excuse me, sir," he said as he flicked through the pages. "Do you mind if I ask you some questions?" "Not right now," I replied as I tried to maneuver around him. "I need to check on my mom." He sniggered. "This would only take a minute. Just answer these questions," he said as he shook his head. "Fine," I said in frustration. "Just get on with it." He ripped out a sheet of paper and handed it to me. "Can you sign this before we get started? It's just to say that you will take on your mother's responsibilities until she returns home." I probably should have read it first, but the writing was too small, and I really wanted to check on my mom, so I signed it. "Now let's get started. Do you like the color of the sky? If not, what color would you like it to be?" At first, I thought he was joking and laughed, but that made him angry. "Please, sir, you need to take this seriously," he said, poking his pen in my chest. "I want to get out of here today, and we have a lot to get through. So answer these questions fast and honest, okay?" I was a bit stunned, so I just nodded. "So, the color of the sky. You like it?" I nodded. "Yep." "Okay. Where was I?" he said as he hovered over his clipboard with his pen. "Oh yeah. If you could be any animal, what would you be? Do I really have to answer these questions? They're stupid, I replied while rolling my eyes. Can I just go with my mom instead? I'm really worried about her. You have already signed the form. So, yes, indeed, you have to answer these stupid questions. And no, you can't go with your mommy, he replied sarcastically before shouting, Now answer these fucking questions. So loud that I nearly shat my pants. I don't know why I said it, but I blurted out, A budgie! A budgie! I would like to be a budgie. He smiled, then replied calmly, Very good. We don't get too many of those anymore. Now, if music had a taste, what flavor would your favorite song be? He continued asking me questions like that for about 30 minutes. By the end, they became downright creepy, like, if you were trapped on a desert island with your best friend with no food and he died, would you eat him? Or, did you ever have homicidal thoughts about your family? I didn't really think. I just said the first thing that came to mind, which seemed to satisfy him. The last thing he asked me was, What's your favorite Teletubby? I smirked. I hate every one of those freaky fuckers. They creep me out. His reply gave me a shiver down my spine. If you can handle them, he grinned, you're not going to like what's coming next. Then he turned around and walked away laughing hysterically. As they were driving off, I could see both him and the driver pointing and laughing. As soon as they were gone, I rang my dad and told him what happened. I expected him to panic and ring the cops, but all he said, Oh, right. I suppose I will have to come home then. Like it was an inconvenience to him. He couldn't believe it. His wife was taken away in a van by what I believe was a group of escaped psychopaths, and all he said was, Oh, right. To make things worse, he wouldn't even let me ring the police. He said, Don't worry, son. I'll be straight home and we'll sort it then. The most dramatic experience of my life, and my dad was acting like it was nothing. This was coming from a man who would nearly send out a search party if I came home an hour late. Yet his wife could be dying or dead, and he didn't even care. I expected him to come home immediately, but he didn't come back for 3 hours, even though we lived 20 minutes from where he worked. Luke came in after him and went straight to bed without saying a word. I was expecting a very long conversation, but all I got was, Did your mother have dinner cooked before she left? I just stood there with my mouth open. I was sure I was dreaming. There was no other way to explain what was going on. By the time I snapped out of it, my dad was in the kitchen eating away like nothing happened. I felt really guilty over what I did to Mom and confessed everything. I thought he was going to kill me for pushing Mom down the stairs, but after 30 minutes of pouring my heart out and begging for forgiveness, all I got out of him was eye rolls, a sigh of boredom. And when I finished, he took a deep breath, stood up, and let out the loudest burp, saying, Look, son, he said, yawning. Shit happens. Now go to bed and forget about it. Before walking away, I didn't know how to react. I just stood there in a daze for I don't know how long. To be honest, I didn't even know how I got to bed that night. But I remembered the dreams. They were so strange. I was on this weird island. My mom was there. She was on a stage, or maybe it was an altar. She was dressed in her Teletubby costume. There were hundreds of people dressed in Halloween costumes clapping and cheering at my mom as she danced on stage. When I joined in, she stopped dancing and started staring at me for what felt like an eternity. I started feeling uncomfortable and I stood up. But as I was about to walk away, my mom screamed. Then someone grabbed me from behind and dragged me on stage. As I got close to my mom, someone whispered something in my ear. I had no idea what it was. But I know it was bad because it filled me with such rage that I could barely hold it in. Then everyone started chanting, "Kill her, kill her." The next thing I know, I'm on top of her, tearing lumps out of her with my bare hands. By the time I'm finished, there is nothing left, only a pool of blood and guts. When I got up and looked around, everyone was gone apart from one guy in the back that was slowly walking towards me with his hands behind his back. As he got closer, I realized it was my dad. He was smiling, but it wasn't a real smile. I could see his pain through his red, swollen eyes as he tried to hold back the tears. He stopped right in front of me and took out a mirror from behind his back and showed it to me. I can see the reflection that I am wearing the Tinky-Winky fucking costume. But it was melting. It is melting, and there is blood oozing out from everywhere. Then I woke up. At least, I thought I did. In the corner of the room, I could see a shadowy figure silently swaying over and back as it was dancing. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. And when I tried to lean out and turn on the light, I realized I couldn't move. It scared me so much that I think I blacked out. When I came around, I was still paralyzed and that thing has gotten closer. It wasn't long before I blacked out again for the rest of the night. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Each time I woke, the shadowy figure was getting closer and closer until it was right in front of me. It was just standing there, motionless, staring at me. Then it suddenly reached out and touched me. The next thing I know, it's morning and I'm lying in bed with my blankets over my head. Suddenly I felt something moving behind me, so I ripped the sheets off and threw them on the floor, revealing Tinky-Winky lying in bed beside me. Then I actually woke up screaming on the floor, wrapped up like a burrito in my sheets. At the time, I thought it was just a crazy dream, brought on by an even crazier night, but it wasn't. I found that out the hard way. If only I took it more seriously, I might not have started the chain reaction that led up to this Halloween, and the horrible things that I had to do. The end. This has been Gray Stories. I hope you liked them.